It all started, as so many things do these days, with a tweet from Donald Trump. The president thought he was responding to a young woman purporting to be a huge fan, but news hounds got on the trail. Last Saturday, someone named Nicole Mincy, using the handle @ProTrump45, tweeted, "Trump working hard for the American people." On vacation in New Jersey, Trump tweeted back, "Thank you, Nicole."
The Twitterverse is buzzing with news about Nicole Mincy,
and sent reporters scrambling to find the elusive Nicole, the Daily Beast's Ben Collins among them. Collins discovered that while Nicole was a real person, she was using a stock photo and was really just selling pro-Trump merchandise.
A couple of people who kind of hatched a scheme to sell some Trump merchandise, make a little bit of money, and then create this fake person.
The site sells knockoff Trump paraphernalia. Nicole and cohorts ginned up thousands of followers and apparently were doing pretty well until Trump got involved.
Trump retweeted Nicole Mincy, the fake person, over the weekend, and it has led to the unraveling of the whole thing.
And the shutdown of the whole operation. The Washington Post speculated it was a Russian bot that Trump fell for. And while that does not appear to be the case, don't expect him to learn anything from this.
If you'll recall, before the election, Trump actually fell for a fake account that was tweeting out quotes from Mussolini.
Stay tuned for an Elvis sighting. I learned a lot by this. I didn't know that there was this whole industry of fake Twitter accounts and that this thing was quite insidious. I guess they were invading other sites and imaging their products over other products. And there was this core band of about 5 or 6 people. And then, Adam, or Josh, maybe you guys understand this better. They used the term bought their followers. I don't understand that. I mean, did they just gin up the followers? Or they literally bought thousands?
You can, if you wanted to, tomorrow, if you wanted to get
sure I do. No.
those followers, you could pay a few $100s and get 1 million followers.
Oh.
Basically, there's an entire industry where people create fake accounts and do that in an automated way, and then you say you want them to follow you, and they follow you.
And you pay them to do it.
You pay them, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think this is interesting in a few ways. One is that I don't think that we, as a people, as a nation, have quite understood the reach that bot networks have, particularly on Facebook and Twitter. I mean, there was a study that came out last month by some researchers that looked at 14 million tweets from the election season and found that the bots that they identified were disproportionately likely to be pushing fake news stories early on in the process. Before they would go viral, they would get there by networks of bots retweeting and retweeting those stories. They would disproportionately target influential Twitter users through mentioning them and replying to them. There's this. We still don't know. I mean, one of the things that's being investigated now is the role that Russian efforts might have had specifically on Facebook. There is a very real sense in which the news reality we think we're seeing on social media isn't just skewed. It's also imaginary in a lot of cases.
You know, I knew things had changed when last week I was reading a story that I believe it was on the NBC News nightly news site. And it was an interesting story, but before I got too deep into the story, I paused to try to figure out whether this was a real story. I mean, I found myself, I had to verify, cross-reference it, see who else was reporting it. And I think that's what it's come down to, because everything is packaged in such a way that it makes it very difficult to figure out whether it's true or false. And it's sad that it's come to this, but it's the reality of the day. And as for the bot thing, I mean, I think the reason that people will buy these followers, obviously, is because you want to appear as if you have a bigger following, which will be good for getting sponsorships or whatever it may be. But also there's this thinking that if you can show that you have followers, then people tend to gravitate to it and just builds on it. So it kind of jumpstarts your following.
We should highlight that this account seems not to have been designed or run to push pro-Trump information so much as it was apparently a money-making opportunity with clip art attached to the alleged operator. And this website, pro-Trump, I think it was
pro-45, like a revolver,
which is still online and still sells
it's not
America
active.
Great
you can't get anything.
And stuff. In addition, the alleged narrative around Nicole Mincy proved irresistible to the Daily Caller, the conservative and disreputable website, which did a profile of her saying, "Oh, isn't it
she's a young
fascinating?
African-American.
She's African-American.
And we're paid to do it. It was sponsored content. It wasn't.
I didn't realize it was sponsored.
It was an
content.
ad months ago.
She voted for Barack Obama, but she was disappointed in what he did for African Americans. Now she's all in on Trump, and the Daily Caller, to its great discredit, still has that piece online. There's a publisher's note which says, "The story may not be true, but the merchandise is a great deal going by." Shame on.
Let me bring up a related story about these bot networks, and it just kind of shows you the insidious ways that they work. You remember a few months ago, there were reports that President Trump had leaked out information to the Russians when they were meeting in the Oval Office with him. And this was the subject of some pretty big stories for a day or two. At the moment that these stories began to be reported, this massive bot network, apparently controlled by the Russians, went to work and started recycling several-year-old false stories about President Obama leaking details of the bin Laden raid. And the idea was to drown out the news about what President Trump was reported to have done. And they were quite successful with it because they have a network not only of these hundreds of thousands of fake bot accounts, but also fake news sites that the bots were linking to. They were all linked to each other, so they did well in Google search engine optimization. And their stories rose to the top and drowned out the New York Times and the Washington Post stories.